Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, taking a deep dive into this Tony White defense for the Nebraska Cornhuskers in 2023. This is a storyline that we've kind of touched on, but haven't really taken a deep dive into. And if you guys have heard me talk about this defense, you know I'm extremely excited about what Tony White is going to bring. The 3-3-5 defense. I want to dive into the pros and cons of running this defense, and then most importantly, like, what do you need for a 3-3-5 defense to be successful? And from what I've seen, I think the personnel that Nebraska has on the defensive side of the ball is really going to fit well with Tony White and what he wants to do on the defensive side of the ball. Now, before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys, and especially the Nebraska fans. You guys have shown a ton of love to the boys. It's been a blast talking this Nebraska team under the Matt Rhule era. So, one, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, like, the best part about doing this is just hearing from you guys in the comment section, chopping it up about ball. So let me know in the comment section what you guys are thinking about. And let's get into this Tony White defense. And first, I kind of want to just talk about the pros and cons of running the 3-3-5. And the pros are, the largest pro goes back to the Tom Osborne days and what he and that was speed on the field. Whether it's on the offensive side of the ball or the defense, having speed absolutely kills. And what the 3-3-5 does is essentially you're replacing one of those members of the front seven with another defensive back. And so you have a lot more speed on the field. You obviously will be able to cover a little bit better with a little bit more defensive back personnel on the field. And then one other thing that I don't think people talk enough about in terms of the pros of running the 3-3-5 is it's gets a lot easier to scheme stuff up, whether it's coverages, whether it's blitzes. When you have a bunch of guys that are lined up off the ball, kind of lined up in a lot of different spots and a lot of different looks, offensive line struggle to know who's coming. Quarterback the struggles to know who's dropping back in coverage. And at the college level, that's massive because most quarterbacks have arm talent. They can make the throws. I think the biggest drop off you see from the NFL quarterbacks to the college quarterbacks is being able to diagnose pre-snap. And if the quarterback struggles to diagnose pre-snap and you're making it really hard, I think that's another recipe for big negative plays, big time turnovers. So that's another thing that I would really expect Tony White to utilize is with this 3-3-5, with a lot of different kind of packages and personnel you have. I mean, you're going to see a lot of different looks, and I think it's going to confuse a lot of quarterbacks, especially in the Big Ten West, who are used to seeing that traditional 4-3, pretty bland, pretty simple. Nebraska's going to be changing it up a little bit. Now, the cons are kind of obvious, right? When you take a front seven member and replace him with a defensive back, you get a little bit smaller. Maybe you lack a little physicality in terms of the run game. So stopping the run kind of becomes the biggest liability of this 3-3-5 defense. Now, that being said, the 3-3-5, there are elements that help you in the run game. And you go back as a Michigan fan, many of you guys know TCU runs that 3-3-5. Michigan, one of the best rushing attacks in the country last year. I think a lot of Michigan fans, including myself, even JJ McCarthy, said going into the game, like, if they're going to run up in that 3-3-5 all game, we're just going to run the ball down their throat. We're going to get physical. Now, what Michigan struggled with was all that speed. Suddenly, you're asking your guards to block in space the second level. And our guards, as good as they are moving bodies on the line of scrimmage, when they're in space, they struggled to get hands on those linebackers and defensive backs at the second level. And what you saw is just a ton of speed swarming to the football. So, yes, you might lack size in the box in terms of a 3-3-5 defense, but what you don't lack is speed. And that can give a lot of offensive linemen trouble, again, especially in the Big Ten. Like Big Ten, the offenses, offensive lines, quarterbacks, even running backs kind of reading blocking schemes. They're used to seeing that traditional 4-3 pretty vanilla defense. Tony White's going to change that up, and that's why I'm really excited about what he can do. Now, I do want to talk about what, more importantly, and this is a problem you see with a lot of coordinators, in my opinion, is a lot of coordinators come in and they don't really coach to their players. They just coach to the scheme that they've coached for the last 20 years. And that becomes a problem. And I think Tony White, for one, his scheme fits exactly what I think this Nebraska personnel is, because you have a ton of versatility. And that's when I look at my notes and say, what's the one most important thing about running that 3-3-5 defense is you have to have players who are versatile, who can do a lot of different things, whether it's stop the run, whether it's drop back in coverage, tackle in space, hold up in the run game, blitz. You're going to ask these guys to do a lot of things, specifically at certain positions. And so the first position I want to talk about and kind of dive into is that fifth defensive back, which it sounds like it's going to be Isaac Gifford, who played a lot for Nebraska last year. And what you need from that defensive back, most importantly, is the ability to tackle in the box. Like, you need a physical guy that's not afraid to come up and run support, because when you do like kind of give up some size, you're taking a defensive lineman or a backer off the field. You need to have that defensive back who's coming onto the field, not only provide coverage ability and the ability to play in space, you need to have them be able to come up and tackle. And that's one thing Isaac Gifford is really, really good at. I mean, this dude flies around the field. He's extremely physical. He's very, very good tackler. I think Isaac Gifford is kind of a perfect fit in terms of what you want that fifth defensive back to do in this 3-3-5. Now, I will say I do have some question marks, excuse me, about his ability to maybe cover some of those shiftier slot wide receivers. That being said, you also have 4 other defensive backs who can help shore that up. But most importantly, you got to have that fifth defensive back being able to tackle, and more importantly, willing to tackle. Isaac Gifford certainly checks that box. Now, the next position group you're looking at is kind of that hybrid linebacker pass rusher, and that's going to be MJ Sherman, transfer from the Georgia Bulldogs, arguably, in my opinion, the most talented player on this defense. Everything you hear out of camp is this dude is a beast, and he's also a leader. And MJ Sherman, you go back to his time at Georgia, he has experience playing off-ball linebacker, playing in space. He has a lot of experience rushing off the edge. He's also extremely physical guy, so he can kind of hold up in the run game as well. MJ Sherman, similar to Isaac Gifford, who's going to be asked to play in run support, blitz off the edge, drop back and coverage. MJ Sherman is going to be asked to do a lot of those things too. And that's kind of gets to scheming different things up. Whether MJ Sherman's coming on a blitz, whether he's not, that's going to kind of, I think, get to a lot of opposing quarterbacks in terms of you don't really know where the pressure's coming, because you have MJ Sherman, who is a very, very good edge rusher, but also can drop back in coverage. MJ Sherman kind of checks all those boxes. Good edge rusher, can play in space. I don't have a question about him dropping back in coverage, making tackles in the flat, playing those intermediate routes. I think MJ Sherman, again, another one just like Isaac Gifford that really fits what you want to do. And now next, kind of the defensive lineman, right? Cam Lenhart is, I think, another perfect fit. Oh, you could also say the same thing with Elijah Jeudy, right? Cam Lenhart, true freshman, coming from IMG. Elijah Jeudy in the portal from A&M. Both guys who I think could play the 5-tech, play rushing off the edge, but also can play inside. You have guys like those who can kind of move all along the defensive line. So you need to play them at the 3-tech for one coverage or one scheme look. Okay, they can do that. You need to rush them off the edge and another look. They can certainly do that too. So the versatility for some of these guys like Cam Lenhart, Elijah Jeudy, MJ Sherman, Isaac Gifford, I think you have a lot of guys who have that versatility. Now, there's 2 more things I want to touch on. Another really important aspect is your nose tackles. In TCU, what they did really successfully is they had a big body nose tackle who went, I believe, 6'2", 330, like legitimate fire hydrant build. You have to have these nose tackles be able to deal with double teams, because how offenses are going to try to attack is they're going to try to run the football and work up to linebackers. If you have a nose tackle that can't kind of eat up double teams and let these linebackers play free, you're in trouble. I really like Ty Robinson and Nash Hutchmaker. I'm not saying these guys are top first-round draft picks. That being said, what they're going to be asked to do in terms of, hey, be strong at the point of attack, hold on to your double teams. Nash Hutchmaker was like an all-state wrestler. I believe a state champ wrestler, like an elite wrestler. Ty Robinson, just a massive workout warrior of a human. I feel really good about Ty Robinson and Nash Hutchmaker being able to hold the point of attack and let these linebackers and defensive backs play free. Because if you can let those guys play free, you have a lot of speed on the field, kind of swarming to the football. And then the last part that, I think is the best fit for Nebraska is what position group do you need to be the deepest with the 3-3-5? It's your defensive backs, which is a position group that a lot of people struggle to find talent in. Nebraska, I think, is loaded in the back end. I mean, you're looking at one of the better cornerback duos in Quentin Newsome and Malcolm Hartzog. Really like Marquise Buford Jr. at the safety spot, Corey Collier, Tommy Hill. It's a loaded group, and we talked about it when Miles Farmer left. Miles Farmer transfers out, and what our take was, Nebraska's going to be okay in the back end. They got enough really quality players. So from a personnel standpoint, I think this matches up perfectly with what Tony White wants to do. And you're going to see just a little bit more of an aggressive defense in terms of scheming up pressures, scheming up different coverages. And that's something that, especially in the Big Ten West, especially for this Nebraska team, you haven't seen a ton of. And that's kind of where the college game is going, is that people are going to try to spread you out, try to attack all blades of grass on the field, especially when you get out of the Big Ten West and they get rid of the divisions. Like, Nebraska needs to be a team that can kind of, if you want to go beat Ohio State, you have to have the athletes in the back end. The 3-3-5 defense, I think, allows Nebraska to be a little bit more athletic, to fly around the football field a little bit more. And when you have athletes and you can fly around the football, negative plays happen, turnovers happen. And that's kind of the winning recipe of college football. Creating negative plays, creating turnovers. That's how you win football games. Now, again, the one big thing, and I think what's exciting is we're going to see it week one. Like, Minnesota's going to try to grind this ball down your throat. If Nebraska can hold up against Minnesota's run game, really optimistic about what this defense can be. And we'll jump on after this Minnesota game and kind of talk about what we saw. If this Nebraska team can stop Minnesota's rushing attack and they will try to run it 30 plus times a game, I'm really excited about what Nebraska can do on the defensive side of the ball with Tony White. That's like I wanted to take some time because I've been mentioning the 3-3-5 defense repeatedly, but we haven't really dove into what it's going to look like for Nebraska. I'm not even sure I know what it's going to look like, but we're going to find out relatively quickly. So again, appreciate the Nebraska fans rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.